on YouTube. I'm your host, Pete. And with me tonight, Tina Tomaszewski and DJ D from the DJ D Show. And we're going to be talking about Admiral Byrd's diary, the Hollow Earth, the Antarctica mystery. That's what we're going to get into tonight. But before we get started, I want to say hello, one and all. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Really appreciate you being here with us night after night, day after day, as we delve into the world of the weird. And we're going to get weird tonight because this is a continuation of what we spoke about 2 nights ago when we spoke of Operation High Jump. So we're going to kind of pick up where we left off there because there's still so much more to this topic. But as you know, I like to give us a little time to allow the notifications to go out, let people know the show's going on. So we're going to bandy about nothing for about 5, maybe 10 minutes. And then we'll do about an hour and a half of deep dive into this Antarctica mystery and see what is going on with his secret diary of Admiral Byrd. What did he find? What was going on at the poles? Such a strange mystery. I think because so few people get to go to these places, it's a constant source of mystery. So remote, so desolate. You know, it's laid undiscovered for eons. So it's been, for me, a great source of curiosity. Ever since I first came across the topic in 2016, at the height of the Antarctica craze, there was a lot of people scrounging around for every bit of information they could about the topic. And I, guilty as charged, I was too. And it's been quiet on that front for a while. I mean, of course, you have people come forward claiming to be whistleblowers. They say this, you know, and you have other guys, they say that. But I don't just want to rely on a lot of what's been going on in the meantime. You know, I think that there's more information out there than just what we get currently. And I think what we get currently needs to be brought into question. Even what we talk about here tonight, I think that it's only your due diligence to question everything. So that's what we do. We lay it out. We're going to see what you guys think. As you're coming in, if you don't mind, please hit that thumbs up button. Maybe share this out on social media. Maybe we'll get a few more people in here tonight.
Yeah.
People new to the mystery of Antarctica and the secret going-ons down there. It's strange history. The story of Admiral Byrd and his secret diary. What's going on at the poles? What's happening there? What does it have to do with a place called Agartha? Deep within the hollow earth. That's where we're headed tonight.
Very deep indeed.
Yes. Yes, sir. The farthest realms of the most far-reaching ends of the earth. The frozen wasteland. A desert of ice, 2 miles thick, with secrets. Do they hold secrets in the ice?
Find out.
Oh yeah.
Okay. This is weird.
What's going on?
Still tapping
You
left.
still have a keyboard problem? Did you unplug it and plug it back in?
No.
Turn it on and off again. That's
Don't worry about it. You have to reboot it, but
yeehaw.
I've never had this happen before. Anybody have a problem with their keyboard key and left instead of right? Or tabbing left instead of right?
I've had that with controllers. Yeah, usually is the
Yeah, Tina, unplug it and plug it back in. I think that'll do the job.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, Joseph Aldridge says, spoilers, it holds more ice. Now, I think there's more to it than ice, Joseph. There's much more to it than ice. There's secrets in the ice. Maybe even the fabled Nephilim, frozen in ice, washed down there by the flood. But that's a topic for a whole nother time. Yes, that's definitely a topic for a whole nother time. So let's talk about this. We covered Operation Heli Jump. We talked about Admiral Byrd and his trip to Antarctica, the big military expedition. We covered all of that in detail 2 nights ago. So if you missed that part, feel free to revisit that one at your leisure. We will get into this one tonight. And this talks about a secret base and the Hollow Earth. Now, I want to point out here that this secret diary started floating around in the 70s. And since then, it's become part of Hollow Earth lore. You know, these things all have lore to them. And I think that's what interests me the most in all these various topics that we talk about. There's a great big lore associated with UFOs or with the ancient world or with the paranormal. Like, they each have their components that make up the picture of the whole. You know? And I think specifically with the lore we're talking about here of the Hollow Earth, the various theories and the various people that have been involved with it, going back to people like John Cleve Sims Jr., whose gravestone is a globe of the Hollow Earth. There's actually one of his globes in the Philosophical Society in Philadelphia, I believe. So, you know, he used to travel around and give lectures about the Hollow Earth. This was a thing. This was the thing people did. And they were doing it in all seriousness. This is the time of people printing pamphlets and giving lectures. And that laid the foundation for what comes along in the 70s, where you still got people, I'm sure, printing newsletters. And, you know, these things kind of going around in like zines. Lane Teague says, Secrets of the Ice. What does it mean to the Crop Circle song? Yes, the Crop Circle song, everybody. That's a good one. Jared Centerfold says, yeah, Pete, like a flash frozen Nephilim society, perhaps. Yeah, it could be. I did a video about it. That's one component of this whole Antarctica thing. That's one component of it. Like, and I like the real fanciful, far out lore. That's what I like. I like the Nephilim stories. I like the Secret City stories. You know, the Ark of Gabriel stories. Real convoluted, crazy stuff. It's great. It's great. It's captivating. It's absolutely captivating. It is something that you can really sink your teeth into and get all spun out in the lore of it. And it becomes part and parcel associated with Hollow Earth to the same extent that the Betty and Barney Hill case relates to UFOs. It's just part of it. It's like part of the fabric of it. And I love that. I love the layers. There's so many layers to it. So I do have some articles to get into tonight. Some interesting stuff that, of course, I found in my digging around. Now, this is Admiral Byrd in 1939, Antarctica, and the mysterious snow cruiser. This article comes all the way back from 2001 from the Hollow Earth Insider website. A few years ago, I spent a great deal of time researching the Arctic and Antarctic exploits of Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, looking for anything that could explain why his name continues to pop up in any serious study of the Hollow Earth theory. I have already reported in my research about the possible involvement of the Admiral in the exploration of lands located inside our global world. The most significant fact is a lack of proof otherwise that really stands out in our investigation. In the series of reports, The Quest for the Inner Passage, We found that Admiral Byrd, whose family is part of an elitist group through kingship with England's royal family, seemed to know from an early age he was destined to explore the Earth's polar regions. As a matter of fact, his grandmother, when the Admiral was but a small boy, said that child would go to the North Pole one day. Good young Dick, as his family called him, had been groomed from an early age to explore the secret lands. In Quest for the Inner Passage, we learned that a veil of secrecy has covered his expedition from the start. As one biographer put it, there were secrets that would not be talked about. We also learned that the One World Order paymaster, John D. Rockefeller, and his pals had financed every one of his early expeditions. And, much to the dismay of other expedition members, all the scientific information gathered by members of Byrd's first Antarctic expedition, enough to fill 7 large books, was turned over to Rockefeller before anyone else had a chance to study the findings, only to vanish and never be seen again. In early 1938, those in the know were well aware that a war was on the horizon in Europe. The German leader was beginning to flex his muscle as he launched a massive expansion of Germany's borders. On September 23rd, Charles A. Lindbergh, who had been living abroad since the kidnapping of his infant son in 1932, wrote a letter to the United States ambassador to Britain, Joseph Kennedy, in which he stated, "I'm convinced that it is wiser to permit Germany eastward expansion than to throw England and France unprepared into the war at this time. Britain cannot win a war in Europe even with U.S. aid." Germany had been bankrupt since 1931, and their trade balance showed a trade deficit of 432 million marks. An expansion and buildup of war materials was putting additional strain on the German pocketbook. The financial woes were all pushed aside to finance the expansive expedition that was then in the planning stages, an expedition that was important to the Reich's hierarchy for reasons which are kept secret to this very day. On a winter night in 1938, the German research ship Schwabenland cast off the dock in Hamburg, destination Antarctica. Aboard, accompanying the ship's hand-picked crew, were some of Germany's top airmen, technicians, oceanographers, biologists, meteorologists, and earth scientists, all members of the first German Antarctic expedition in 1938 and 39. The people who made up the costly Antarctic expedition were under secret orders not to divulge their mission, the purpose of which is little known today. Enter Admiral Richard E. Byrd. On Saturday, July 8th, 1939, Americans across the country opened their morning newspaper to the front page story, not unlike the one from the New York Times quoted below. President directs speed on Byrd trip. Washington, July 7th. President Roosevelt moved today to prevent possible extension of Germany's claims to Antarctic areas into the Western Hemisphere by directing Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd to leave in October to territory within the sphere of influence of the Monroe Doctrine. It is apparent that the government was prepared to take the position, if necessary, that any attempts by foreign powers to establish bases west of the 180th meridian in the Antarctic would be considered an unfriendly act. If the $340,000 appropriated by Congress for the expedition permitted, Admiral Byrd said he would outfit 3 ships. His own ship would be the Bear of Oakland, which is to undergo a careful inspection in Boston. He said he would lend it to the government after a new engine had been installed. As we can see from the above, the major confrontation between American and German forces seemed to be a very real and present danger in Antarctica in 1939. However, in retrospect, we find that the German presence in the land of everlasting mystery was publicized reason for Admiral Byrd's hurry-up expedition. At no time did Admiral Byrd, or those under his command, make any attempt to observe what the German expedition was up to. In fact, if you look at a map of Christoph Friedrich's well-documented study of the German expedition, it will show that neither in 38 or 39, nor subsequently in 47 and in 55, did any expedition in Antarctica did Americans come anywhere close to lands claimed by the Germans. Could the stated reason for the 39 expedition, as is often the case in military operations, only a cover for a more important secret mission for Admiral Byrd and his fellow members of the 1939 expedition? The following small article, hidden away on the back page of a November 30th, 1939 issue of the New York Times, highlights the possibility. Secret orders taken by Byrd on polar trip. Washington, November 29, Associated Press. Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd joined the vanguard of his South Pole expedition at the Panama Canal today with the confidential orders from the White House. Officers say the orders were a State Department secret. Even the existence of the orders, authorities said, had been kept a secret. Admiral Byrd received them, informants say, on a hurry trip to Washington last week before departing for Panama. Is it possible that these secret orders contain the real reason for Admiral Byrd's expedition? Was the fact that Germans were also conducting a secret expedition in Antarctica and making the Admiral's real reason for being put together the America expedition were a matter of utmost importance? Could both expeditions have been carrying secret orders to explore unknown lands beyond the pole? Were the Americans and Germans involved in 1939 in a race to be the first to gain entrance and explore the legendary lands inside our Earth? A race not unlike the space race between America and Russia several decades later. In an upcoming issue, we'll discover this close possibility, but for now, let's look at another mystery. As stated in the Thay, Volume 1, if you're going to explore unknown lands for the first thing, you must have a base camp or last outpost on the edge of the area you wish to explore. Here, you would pitch your radio tent so exploring teams could keep in contact. You'd also use your base camp as a supply dump for the expedition. In January of 1929, Admiral Byrd established Little America as an outpost for the Antarctic continent. But what if the area to be explored wasn't a barren land of ice and snow? What if it were more supportive of life than we are told, such as unknown, thought to be extinct, huge wild animals and reptiles, and even more dangerous creatures of intelligence equal to or greater than man's? In that case, the best piece of equipment would be some sort of mobile base, one that would enable your expedition crews a way to cover a lot of territory very quickly, and at the same time be a haven of relative safety and adventuresome explorers. The mysterious snow cruiser, a front page story from the July 8th, 1939 New York Times. Snow cruiser offered. A giant snow cruiser, specifically designed to span yawning crevices and jagged ice ridges, may be a major piece of equipment on the Byrd expedition. The cruiser was designed by Dr. Thomas C. Portier of Chicago, second in command of the Byrd expedition in 1933 to 1935. In recent testimony before a House Appropriations Subcommittee, he indicated that the odd craft would carry significant equipment for the exploring party to last a year. On its deck, Dr. Portier suggested the machine could carry a Navy pursuit plane, which by making short flights at 300-mile intervals could explore about 5,000 square miles of unknown territory during a single Antarctic summer. Let that stop and sink in. Significant equipment for an exploring party to last a year. Could explore 500,000 miles of unknown territory. That's a lot of ice and snow, to say the least. Put into perspective, that is equal to 100 auto trips from Anchorage, Alaska to Jacksonville, Florida. Someone was planning an expedition that, in its time, seemed to rival man's first trip to the moon. Naturally, something of this magnitude was destined to capture the interest of the press and citizens of America. So step by step, the government development of the snow cruiser was followed eagerly by the media of the day. From the July 15, 1939 issue of the New York Times, Byrd uses Army tanks on Polar Quest, a big snow cruiser, and Antarctic equipment by the Associated Press. Excerpts. Boston, July 14th. Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd disclosed plans for the coming expedition in the Antarctic, said today that six Army tanks and a unique 45,000-pound snow cruiser would be used to transport over the South Pole's icy wastelands. The snow cruiser would carry 4 men and a plane and be extremely mobile and easy to manipulate under the difficult conditions found in Antarctica. I found the next significant mention of the snow cruiser in the August 2nd, 1939 issue of the New York Times, and of all places, the Society section. Giant tire soon ready-made in Akron for Antarctic trip. It will weigh 1,900 pounds. Chicago, August 1st, Associated Press. The Armor Institute of Technology said that the first of the giant tires for the ice cruiser of the government coming Antarctic expedition will be taken from its mold at the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company's plant at Akron on August 9th. Harold Vachteborg, director of the Armor Foundation, said that the 10-foot tire, each weighing 1,900 pounds, would be the largest ever manufactured. Not to be outdone, many of the nationally read popular magazines of the time also ran their own stories, complete with drawings and diagrams of the giant vehicle. Scientific American ran their story in the January 1940 issue. However, they were beaten to the punch by Popular Mechanics, whose story Snow Cruiser to Explore Antarctic was featured in the October 1939 issue. According to their report, the huge monster vehicle designed to climb the polar mountains and slither across giant crevasses would be 55 feet long and 15 feet wide. The power would be supplied by two 200-horsepower diesel engines that would be connected to generators to furnish power for driving, for radio, electronic stoves, heat, and a machine shop. The giant cruiser would be controlled by one man who would be in the second-floor cabin. The Popular Mechanics article continued to describe the vehicle. Below the driver is the repair shop. To the rear, navigation chart desk, galley, which is also photographic darkroom, bunkroom, storeroom, and compartment in the tail for 2 spare tires. The cruiser will have a 5,000-mile range and will travel at from 10 to 30 miles an hour under conditions except severe blizzards. An automatic gyro pilot may be installed to hold the cruiser on any set course. Front and rear wheels steer independently so the Antarctic bus can turn in a 30-degree radius or shift sideways at a 25-degree angle. The scientists will measure thickness of ice with the geophysical seismograph, making gravity determinations and meteorological observations, survey unexplored Antarctic, and study the aurora, terrestrial magnetism, meteors, and other phenomena. Cruiser equipment will cost $150,000. That's in 1939 dollars. Popular Mechanics article also reported that the Navy biplane, which carried a 7-inch lens mapping camera, was rigged atop the cruiser in such a way as to be hauled to its perch by winch or launched on the snow in 10 minutes. As the plane moved full bore ahead, with their plans, the public was taken along for the trip through the pages of newspapers across the nation. On October 15th, the New York Times ran a picture of the partially completed cruiser, of the partially completed cruiser, along with an article titled, "Byrd Expedition Gets Polar Gear. 2 ships, 125 men, 160 dogs, and 5,000 varied items are going to the Antarctic. 5 planes to be taken. 3 tanks and a snowmobile are aid to work. Departure set for early next month. Boston, October 14. The great Antarctic expedition in history, both in numbers and accessories, is being assembled here for what may be a tortoise-like race with the German scientists from minerally rich South Pole areas. A century after the first United States Antarctic expedition, this second government-financed group will be directed by Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, who twice in the last decade has led his own expeditions into the land where nights are 4 months long. Delayed a month, the expedition hopes to leave November 1st, reaching its destination when harbors are ice-free and, if possible, ahead of parties reportedly organizing in Germany and other countries. Once finished, the snow cruiser was driven from the factory in Chicago to the dock in Boston, supported by a police escort that halted traffic along the highways in 20-mile stretches so the huge machine could pass. Thousands of people followed its progress in newspaper articles and radio reports. Many stopped along the route and made a special trip to try and catch a glimpse of the giant machine. Oh, sorry, I lost my place. By October 28, 1939, the cruiser was well on its way to Boston, but not without mishap. From the October 29, 1939 issue of the New York Times came the following report. Byrd snowcraft founders in creek. 35-ton, 60-foot cruiser hits an Ohio bridge and plunges off-road into water. Lima, Ohio, October 28th. The giant snow cruiser struck a bridge near Gomer about 10 miles from here and stumbled into a stream. The machine dove its nose several feet below the surface of the water while the rest of it was left spanning the stream. It would be several days before the huge machine could be raised from the Pine Run Creek around the trip resumed. Everywhere it traveled, the strange-looking vehicle made headlines. Byrd snow cruiser startles bay traffic, snarls traffic and crawling over the Berkshires, special to the New York Times. Boston, Massachusetts, November 30th. The Antarctic snow cruiser, most tenacious road hog ever to invade New England, steered a leisurely, bouncing course today, as over the Berkshires from Pittsfield to Farmington, causing the greatest traffic jam in Massachusetts history. One letter to the editor, obviously from someone who had been caught up in the movement of the huge craft halfway across America, published in the November 14, 1939 New York Times, stating that the snow cruiser is a thing that has to be seen to be believed. Once seen, it makes one happy as well as proud to know that soon it will be traveling the Antarctic continent, where it cannot hold up to 70,000 motor cars and create a 90-mile traffic jam as it did in Massachusetts on Sunday. Then, on the November 15, 1939 New York Times headline many had been waiting for. Cruiser aboard Byrd ship to Sedale. Snowmobile is lashed to deck, and North Star prepares to leave Boston at dawn today. Settlements projected. Expedition chief proposed ice habitation for 5 or 6 years to clinch discovery claims. In January 1940, as reported in the January 19th issue of the New York Times, the closely watched, well-documented machine arrived of Wales, special to the New York Times. Washington, January 18th. A narrow escape from disaster in moving the Byrd Arctic snow cruiser from the ship to the ice at the expedition's landing place in the Bay of Wales. Amid a welter of flying splinters and broken planks, the gigantic snow cruiser lumbered safely ashore tonight from the Antarctic service ship North Star. The cruiser, kept on the move once all 4 of her 10-foot wheels reached treacherous bay ice alongside the ship. Remaining at the controls, Dr. Thomas C. Poitier of Chicago drove her a full mile before from the ship before coming to a halt. As we can see from the documentation, the snow cruiser was the star of Admiral Byrd's 1939 Antarctic expedition. For months, Americans had read every tiny detail about the progress of manufacturing the beast. The delivery was like the coming of a circus parade, and those close enough or lucky enough to travel to the publicized routes lined the highways as the celebrated vehicle passed by. In fact, the snow machine was featured in every newspaper headline concerning the preparations for the 1939 Antarctic expedition. But after the outpost on wheels was reported to have made it safely to the mysterious continent, the mystery begins. From this point now on, the snow cruiser is never mentioned again. I've spent many, many hours searching through back issues of newspapers and magazine indexes. After that final report, nothing. Once again, as with any investigation into bird shenanigans in the polar regions of our globe, a lead I was following had vanished like a puff of smoke. It was as though the snow cruiser never existed. What happened to the monster machine and the data it was designed to gather? Could it and a hand-picked crew, once unloaded, have gone off on a mission of their own? A mission so secret that it has not been talked about even to this day. One final newspaper article might hold a couple of clues. The May 15th issue of the New York Times carried a lengthy article detailing Admiral Byrd's report on the findings of the 1939 United States Antarctic Service expedition. The Admiral reported that the expedition achieved much more than he thought possible, including the discovery of 900 miles of unknown coastline that explorers had been seeking for hundreds of years. In the lengthy interview, the never mentioned in the snow cruiser, even a stranger, what was apparently, in a lengthy interview, he never mentioned the snow cruiser. Even stranger was that apparently he was never asked. The giant machine that had been on everyone's minds and lips before Byrd left might as well never have existed. He did tell us that 59 men were left behind to carry on. Were these brave souls and crew the support team for a secret mission, using the mighty cruiser to explore the lands beyond the poles? This article also tells us that. The Admiral emphasized the fact that this was not another Byrd expedition, but a project sponsored by the United States government. In other words, John D. Rockefeller and his pals didn't foot the bill this time. Uncle Sam did. He ended the interview with a statement that henceforth he will direct the expedition from Washington. Are these small clues pointing towards what many have said all along? That Admiral Byrd dedicated his life to exploring lands inside our Earth with entrances at the poles. Is this truly the closest guarded secret in the world? Now, I want to find some images of the snow cruiser because I really want to see what this thing looks like.
Yeah, I want to see it.
I've seen the snow cruiser, but
Have
as
you?
always, they take it down quickly. Yeah, it's
Oh.
freaking big. It's pretty. I thought it was a goddamn tank. No, let me see.
Yeah, I'm just going to take a look. Oh, man. Snow cruiser. Antarctica's abandoned behemoth. A snow cruiser hits a bridge and plunges into the creek.
God.
The Antarctic snow cruiser.
Find it? Can't wait to see this thing.
Yeah, here we go. Here it is, everybody.
Uh-oh. Let's see this beast.
There it is.
Look at that.
Joseph Alder for $1.99. Thank you, Joseph Alder. Much appreciated. Joseph says he probably fell into a crevasse. LOL.
There's that bad boy.
Yes, probably did fall into a crevasse. Yeah, so there are videos on YouTube about this. This is the first I'm ever hearing of this. So
Me
this is
too.
very interesting. Like, I've never heard about this behemoth of a beast of a machine before.
No. Is that somebody standing by one of the wheels?
I don't believe so.
What? Okay. I mean, you can see the, like, where you sit, the size of the windows. I mean, it is massive.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you formation of tanks, but again, questionable location where it's coming from.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming one of those wheels on the side is taller than a human, an average size human, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I think they're 10-foot wheels.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
Jan's
they
saying
were 10
gotta pick
foot.
with people. She
Who
wants
you
to
reading?
pick. Jan Sluka wants to pick with people in it too, so she can get the perspective of how big it is, if there is one.
So, yeah, I mean, this is a monster of a thing here. You know, it's quite a large craft. Did not realize that such a thing was ever constructed for this purpose. What happened to it? What became of this thing? Now, I'm seeing some people in the chat saying they discovered it in a glacier. It was
Wow.
abandoned.
Nah, they built it, didn't they? Look at it.
So yeah, I like that. That article was pretty good. It was real heavy on citing other articles regarding this this craft, whether or not this craft itself was designed for another secret mission. What if it was designed to go towards the inner Earth?
Well, what if?
What if it made that trip and on its return trip is when it was abandoned?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
True. I can't see them
I
blowing
linked
that
you in
much
a
not using it. Yeah.
private chat the article. It's also got a YouTube video attached to it, but it's kind of interesting.
There's a picture
The
too
formation of tanks.
there's a picture where it looks like
Allegedly.
they have it on a ship
All disclaimers.
and it's sort of turned sideways and it's going, from like port to starboard. It's like looks like it's hanging over on each end of this big ship. Did you see those, Pete?
No. I was ready to move along here.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to see what time it is because I'm saving the best for the end of the show here. When we're actually going to go through Admiral Byrd's secret diary and read what's in it.
Cool.
Because I think that's the thing. I don't know if a lot of people have read it. I don't know if not a lot of people have known what the passages are in it, but I've got that information.
Juicy.
So we'll save that for the end of the show. That's how we'll go out tonight on the end of that information. So I want to give you guys an idea about this whole Hollow Earth thing and how this relates to Admiral Byrd. And to do that, I need to share with you a diagram of the Hollow Earth. You might have seen this famous image, and I kind of want to put this on a coffee cup, honestly. Yeah, I kind of want to put this on a coffee cup. This is a map of the Hollow Earth here.
That is a good idea, Pete.
I like the way it looks.
Uh-huh.
It's a classic depiction of the Hollow Earth.
It's
classic
symmetric.
depiction of the Hollow Earth. And as you can see up here in this corner as well, you'll see this says Admiral Byrd's flight 1947. See, Admiral Byrd flew into the Hollow Earth, not meaning to. Didn't realize
Right.
he was flying into the Hollow Earth because the opening is so big. So yeah, and that's what I mean. As you can see, Agartha down here.
Yeah.
Agartha, the city of Shambhala.
Uh-huh.
You got central sun.
Yep.
Mountains higher than on the outside.
Crazy.
Different entrances located around the world. The Darrow Caves with stolen saucers. And you'll remember those from the talk of the Darrow and the Tarot as it regards to the Shaver Mysteries.
There you go.
Another video I made a couple of years ago, a very short one. But it does delve into that information if you're interested in that. The Shaver Mysteries. Pretty interesting stuff. Ray Palmer was editor of the magazine, and Richard Shaver was the author of a 10,000 word manuscript about his extremely strange encounters with the Darrow and the Tarot underground in the Hollow Earth. King Solomon's Mines, the Pyramid of Giza, where you find man-made tunnels that go to the Hollow Earth. Melting ice, clouds, Kentucky's Mammoth Cave,
Yeah,
also an entrance to the Hollow Earth.
Kentucky. Yeah.
Also an entrance in Brazil. So yeah, Agartha, the Hollow Earth. This is supposedly what Admiral Byrd encounters. This secret land of the Hollow Earth.
Mhm.
I think that's Mary. That's a cool looking map. Yeah, it's a really cool. I love this map. It's like it's aesthetically very pleasing to me.
It's symmetric. Can you make a tank out of that for me, would you?
Mhm.
Tank. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna make something out of it.
I want to swing one of those.
Yeah, that would be a cool T-shirt.
Yeah.
You could probably use it, no problem. It's old enough, I would think.
Yeah, it's very old.
Yeah. Yeah, and definitely make a good coffee cup too, though.
Forever Consciousness Research Channel. How you been? Good to see you. Says time for a creepy field trip to Agartha. Pack your bags. Yeah,
Sign
I'd be
me up.
down to go to Agartha. You know,
Hell yeah.
it's the perilous journey of getting there because there are other entrances around the world. You know, but it's still like you're crawling into the deep dark earth. Like, I think the best way is to go with the poles. Like, otherwise, you're like crawling out through caves, and who knows if
Mhm.
you're running into Darrows and Taros and
And
mole men,
tight
chuds.
squeezes, claustrophobic areas. No.
Yeah, it's some bizarre stuff.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, do that, Pete. Please make a tank top like that for me.
now I do have some other information here. Let me see how long this is.
Or better yet, a tote.
A tote, an Agartha tote.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Agartha tote bags.
I'm even thinking a pillow at this point.
I feel like I should. Every time I think of the tote bags, I just think of like a PBS pledge drive, and
Well, I mean, they're useful.
Yeah, they would pimp those out for the $100 donations and higher.
Yeah, they're useful
Yeah.
though, and they're really not that pricey. If I remember, I think they're only like about $20 or something like. They're not that pricey on Teespring, so you always use a tote.
I'll see if this is big enough. I don't know if the dimensions are going to be big enough, but
Right.
I'll see.
I
I'll try.
understand.
If it works, like otherwise, this is the biggest one of these I've ever seen.
It's
But that
yeah,
doesn't mean it's going to be big enough for me to
right.
to
Yeah,
put on
because
a
if you
design.
expand it too much, they start
Yeah,
pixelating too much, and you
right.
just
The bigger it gets,
yeah.
and I don't want it to just be some tiny. Well, I guess maybe I could do it as a tiny square off to one side. I don't know. I'll play around with it.
Okay. I will
Just
be looking
just a
forward to
map of
that.
Hollow Earth over your right titty.
Right? I'm gonna hold you to this one.
Yeah, that's what I do all the time.
I want my titty map,
Put the
damn
logo,
it.
just put the logo right on the titty. Yep, right on the nipple.
My titty map.
Okay. So let me get back on topic here.
Yeah, okay.
There's so much information in this Hollow Earth. You know, it really is a lot to go through. So I don't want to pound out everything he said, but the United States and more than 30 other nations prepared unprecedented polar expeditions for the 1957 1958 to penetrate land now proved to extend beyond pole points. My original discourse of them unknown lands beyond the poles in 1926 1928 was captioned by the press as more daring than anything Jules Verne's ever conceived. Then Giannini quoted the following statements by Admiral Byrd, which we have presented above. 1947 February. I'd like to see that land beyond the pole. That area beyond the poles is the center of the great unknown. Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, United States Navy, before his 7-hour flight over land beyond the North Pole. 1956, January 13th. On January 13th, members of the United States expedition accompanied a flight of 2,700 miles from the base of McMurdo Sound, which is 400 miles west of the South Pole, and penetrated a land extent of 2,300 miles beyond the pole. Radio announcement confirmed by the press on February 5th. 1956, March 13th. The present expedition has opened up a vast new land. Admiral Byrd, after returning from the land beyond the South Pole. 1957. That enchanting continent in the sky, land of everlasting mystery. Admiral Byrd. No attention was given by the scientific world to Giannini's book. The strange and revolutionary geographical theory presented was ignored as eccentric rather than scientific, yet Admiral Byrd's statements have only made some of it such a conception of the existence of a land beyond the poles as Giannini claimed to exist. As accepted, Giannini writes, there is no physical end of the Earth's north and southern extremities. The Earth cannot be circumnavigated north and south with the means of the word circumnavigate. However, certain round-the-world flights have contributed to the popular misconception the Earth has been circumnavigated north to south. Over the North Pole, will return to the North Zone temperate areas without turning around can never be accomplished because there is no northern end of the Earth. The same conditions hold true for the South Pole. The existence of worlds beyond the poles has been confirmed by the United States naval exploration during the past 30 years. The confirmation is substantial. The world's eldest explorer, Rear Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd, commanded the government's memorable expedition into that endless land beyond the South Pole. Prior to his departure from San Francisco, he delivered the momentous radio announcement. This is the most important expedition in the history of the world. The subsequent January 13, 1956 penetration of the land beyond the pole to the extent of 2,300 miles proved the Admiral had not been exaggerating. Commenting on Giannini's statements about the possibility of going straight north over the North Pole and reaching the other side of the world, which would be the case if the Earth was convex rather than concave at the pole, Palmer writes in his magazine Flying Saucers. Many of the readers stated that commercial flights continually cross the pole and fly to the opposite side of the Earth. This is not true. And though the airline officials themselves, when they're asked, might say that they do, this is not literally true. They do make navigational maneuvers which automatically eliminate a flight beyond the pole in a straight line in every sense. Ask the pilots of these polar flights, and when they come to an exact point, name one transpolar flight on which you can buy a ticket which actually crosses the North Pole. Examining the route of flights across the North Pole area, we always find they go around the pole or to the side of it and never directly across it. This is strange. Surely a flight advertised as passing directly over the North Pole would attract many passengers who would like to have that experience. Yet strangely, no airline offers such a flight. The air routes always pass on one side of the pole. Why? Is it not possible that if they went straight across the pole, instead of landing on the opposite side of the Earth, the plane would go to that land beyond the pole, the center of the great unknown, as Admiral Byrd called it? Palmer suggests that such an expedition that travels directly north and continues north after reaching the North Pole Point, which he believes is the center of the polar concavity and not on solid land at all, should be organized, retracing Admiral Byrd's route and continuing onward in the same direction until the hollow interior of the Earth is reached. This apparently was never done, in spite of the fact that the United States Navy in its archives has a record of Admiral Byrd's flights and discoveries. Perhaps the reason for this is the new geographical conception of the Earth's formation in the polar regions, which is necessary to accept before the true significance of Admiral Byrd's findings can be appreciated, were it not held by the Navy chiefs who as a result put the matter aside and forgot about it. The above statement by Palmer that commercial airlines do not pass over the North Pole seems reasonable in light of the new Soviet discoveries in relation to the North Magnetic Pole, which was found not to be a point, but a line, which we believed is a circular line, constituting the rim of the polar concavity, so that any point on this circle could be called the North Magnetic Pole, because here the needles of the compass dip directly downward. If this is the case, then it would be impossible for airplanes to cross the North Pole, which, in the center of the polar depression, are not on the Earth's surface, as according to the theory of a solid Earth and a convex formation of the poles. When airplanes reach what they believe is the North Pole, according to compass readings, they are really reaching the limb of the polar concavity, which is the true magnetic North Pole. Referring to Giannani's book, Palmer comments, "The strange book written by Giannani has offered one possibility by which it can definitely be proven that the Earth is shaped strangely at the North Pole, as we are believed it to be at the South Pole. Not necessarily with a hole all the way through, but like a donut, which has swelled so much in cooking that the hole is only a deep depression at each end, or like a gigantic auto tire mounted on a solid hub with recessed hubcaps. No human being has ever flown directly over the North Pole and continued on straight. Your editor thinks this should be done and done immediately. We have planes to do it. Your editor wants to know for sure whether such a flight will wind up in any of the countries surrounding the North Pole, necessarily exactly opposite the starting point. Navigation is not to be made by a compass or by triangulation on existing maps, but solely by the gyro compass on the undeviated straight course from the moment of takeoff to the moment of landing. And not only a gyro compass in a horizontal plane, but one in a vertical plane also, after one enters the polar opening. There must be a positive forward motion which cannot be disputed. Everyone knows that a horizontal gyro compass, such as used now, causes a plane to continually gain in elevation as the Earth curves away below it, as it progresses. Now, according to our theory of polar depression, this would mean that when a plane enters into this depression, the gyro compass should show much a greater gain in elevation than should otherwise be the case, due to the Earth's curving inwards at the North Pole. Now, if the plane continues to its northerly course, this gain in altitude would continue the further it goes, and if a plane tries to maintain that same altitude, it would curve into the hollow interior of the Earth." The following statements by Giannani, written in a letter to the Inquirer, who read about them in Ray Palmer's Flying Saucer magazine, are interesting. The author was extended courtesy by the New York office of U.S. Naval Research to transmit a radio message of Godspeed to Rear Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd, USN, at his Arctic base in February 1947. At that time, the late Rear Admiral Byrd announced through the press, "I'd like to see the land beyond the pole. The land beyond the poles is the center of the great unknown." Subsequently, Admiral Byrd and the Naval Task Force executed a 7-hour flight of 1,700 miles overland, extending beyond the theorized North Pole end of the Earth. In January 1947, prior to the flight, this author was enabled to sell a series of newspaper features to an international feature syndicate, only because of this author's assurances to the syndicate director that Byrd would in fact go beyond the imaginary North Pole point. As a result of the author's prior knowledge of the then commonly known land extending beyond the pole points, and after the syndicated features had been released to the press, the author was investigated by the U.S. Office of Naval Intelligence. That intelligence investigation was due to the fact of Byrd's defining confirmation of the author's revolutionary theories. Later in March 1958, the author delivered a radio address in Missouri expressing the importance of the discovery of land beyond the imaginary North and South Pole points of archaic theory. Speaking of reports of Admiral Byrd's February 1947 flight beyond the North Pole, which appeared in the New York newspapers, Giannani comments, "These accounts describe Byrd's 1,700-mile flight of 7 hours over land and freshwater lakes beyond the assumptive North Pole ends of the Earth, and the dispatches were intensified until a strict censorship was imposed from Washington." Another American writer on flying saucers, Michael X., was impressed by Byrd's discoveries and came to the conclusion that flying saucers must come from an advanced civilization in the Earth's interior, whose outer fringes Byrd visited. He described Byrd's trip as follows. There was a strange valley below them. For some strange reason, the valley Byrd saw was not ice-covered as it should have been. It was green and luxuriant, and there were mountains with thick forests with trees on them, and there was lush grass and underbrush. Most amazingly, a huge animal was observed moving through the underbrush. In a land of ice, snow, and almost perpetual deep freeze, this was a stupendous mystery. When Admiral Byrd went into this unknown country, into the center of the great unknown, where was he? In light of the theory of Marshall Gardner, he was at the very doorway that leads to the Earth's interior and which lies beyond the pole. Both Alaska and Canada have had much more of their share of sightings of flying saucers in recent months. Why? Is there some connection with the land beyond the pole, that unknown territory inside the Earth? There must be a connection. If the flying saucers enter and leave the Earth's interior by way of the polar openings, it is natural they would be seen by Alaskans and Canadians much more frequently than they would by people in other parts of the world. Alaska is so close to the North Pole, and so is Canada. The above observations of a concentration of flying saucers in the Arctic regions corresponds to similar observations by Jarrold and Bender of the concentration in the Antarctic, when they are believed by flying saucer experts to have a landing base, from where they are seen to ascend and return. However, according to theory of his book, what really occurs in the Antarctic, as in the Arctic, is that flying saucers emerge from and re-enter a portal opening leading to a hollow interior of the Earth, their true place of origin. Amy McKell, in his straight line theory, proved that most of the flight patterns of flying saucers are in a north-south direction, which is exactly what would be true if their origin was polar, coming from either the north or south polar opening. In February 1947, about the time when Admiral Byrd made his great discovery of a land beyond the North Pole, another remarkable discovery was made in the continent of Antarctica, the discovery of Bunger's Oasis. This discovery was made by Lieutenant Commander David Bunger, who was in control of the 6 large transport planes used by Admiral Byrd for the U.S. Navy's Operation High Jump. Bunger was flying inland from the Shackleton ice shelf near the Queen Mary coast of Wilkes Land. He and his crew were about 4 miles from the coastline where the open water lies. The land Bunger discovered was ice-free. The lakes were of many different colors, ranging from rusty red, green, to deep blue. Each of the lakes was more than 3 miles long. The water was warmer than the ocean, and Bunger found by landing a seaplane on the lakes, each lake had a gently sloping beach. Around the edges of the oasis, which was roughly square in shape, Bunger saw endless and eternal white snow and ice. 2 sides of the oasis rose nearly 100 feet high and consisted of great ice walls. The other 2 sides had a more gradual and gentle slope. The existence of such an oasis in the far Antarctic, the land of perpetual ice, would indicate warmer conditions there, which would exist if the oasis was in the south polar opening, leading to the warmer interior of the Earth, as well as the case with the warmer territory with lakes and land that Admiral Byrd discovered beyond the North Pole, which was probably within the North Polar opening. Otherwise, one cannot explain the existence of such an oasis of unfrozen territory in the midst of the continent of Antarctica with ice miles thick. The oasis could not result from volcanic activity below the Earth's surface, for since the land areas of the oasis covered 300 square miles, it was too big to be affected by volcanic heat supply. Warm wind currents from the Earth's interior are a better explanation. Thus, Byrd in the Arctic and Bunger in the Antarctic both made similar discoveries of warmer lands area beyond the poles around the same time, early in 1947. But they were not the only ones to make such discoveries. Some time ago, a newspaper in Toronto, Canada, the Globe and Mail, published a photo of a green valley taken by an aviator in the Arctic region. Eventually, the aviator took a picture from the air and did not attempt to land. It was a beautiful valley and contained green rolling hills. The aviator must have gone beyond the North Pole into the same warmer territory that Admiral Byrd visited, which lies inside the polar opening. This picture was published in 1960. In further confirmation of Admiral Byrd's discovery are reports of individuals who claim they had entered the North Pole opening, as many Arctic explorers did without knowing they did, and penetrated far enough to reach a subterranean world in the hollow interior of the Earth. Dr. Nefri Kontum of Los Angeles reported that one of his patients, a man of Nordic descent, told him the following story. I lived near the Arctic circles in Norway. One summer, my friend and I made up our minds to take a boat trip together and go as far as we could into the North Country. So we put a month's provisions on a small fishing boat, and with sail and a good engine on our boat, we set to sea. At the end of 1 month, we had traveled far to the north beyond the pole and into a strange new country. We were much astonished at the weather there. Warm, and at times at night it was almost too warm to sleep. Arctic explorers who penetrated into the far north have made similar reports of warm weather, at times warm enough to make them shed their heavy clothing. Then we saw something so strange we were both astonished. Ahead of the warm open seas we were on, what looked like a great mountain, and into the mountain at certain points the ocean seemed to be emptying. Mystified, we continued in that direction and found ourselves sailing into a vast canyon leading to the interior of the Earth. We kept sailing, and then we saw what surprised us, a sun shining inside the Earth. The ocean that had carried us into the hollow interior of the Earth gradually became a river. This river led, as we came to realize later, all through the inner surface of the world from one end to the other. It can take you, if you follow it long enough, from North Pole clear to the South Pole. We saw that the inner surface of the Earth was divided, as the other one is, both into land and water. There's plenty of sunshine, and both animal and vegetable life abounds there. We sailed further and further into this fantastic country. Fantastic because everything was huge in size as compared with things on the outside. Plants are big, trees gigantic, and finally we came to giants. They were dwelling in homes and towns just as we do on the Earth's surface, and they used a type of electrical conveyance like a monorail car to transport people. It ran along the river's edge from town to town. Several of the inner Earth inhabitants, huge giants, detected our boat on the river and were quite amazed. They were, however, quite friendly. We were invited to dine with them in their homes, and so my companion and I separated, he going with one giant to that giant's home, and I going with another giant to his home. My gigantic friend brought me home to his family, and I was completely dismayed to see the huge size of all the objects in his home. The dinner table was colossal. A plate was put out before me and filled with a portion of food so big it would have fed me abundantly an entire week. The giant offered me a cluster of grapes, and each grape was as big as one of our peaches. I tasted one and found it far sweeter than ever I had any tasted outside. In the interior of the earth, all fruits and vegetables taste far better and more flavorsome than those we have on the outer surface of the earth. I like that, flavorsome. That's a word you don't hear a lot. We stayed with the giants for 1 year, enjoying their companionship as much as they enjoyed knowing us. We observed many strange and unusual things during our visit with those remarkable people, and were continually amazed at their scientific progress and inventions. All this time, they were never unfriendly to us, and we were allowed to return on our own home in the same manner which we came. In fact, they courteously offered us their protection should we need it for the return voyage. These giants were evidently members of an antediluvian race of Atlanteans who established residence in the Earth's interior prior to the historic deluge that submerged their Atlantic continent. A similar experience of a visit to the hollow Earth interior of the Earth through a polar opening and entirely independently was made by another Norwegian named Olaf Jensen and recorded in the book The Smoky God, written by Willis George Emerson, an American writer. This book is based on a report made by Jensen to Mr. Emerson before his death, describing his real experience of visiting the interior of the Earth and its inhabitants. The title, The Smoky God, refers to the central sun in the hollow interior of the Earth, which, being smaller and less brilliant than our sun, appears as smoky. The book relates the true experience of a Norse father and son who, with their small fishing boat and unbounded courage, attempted to find the land beyond the north wind, as they had heard of its warmth and beauty. An extraordinary windstorm carried them most of the distance through the polar openings into the hollow interior of the Earth. They spent 2 years there and returned through the South Polar opening. The father lost his life when an iceberg broke in two and destroyed the boat. The son was rescued and subsequently spent 24 years in prison for insanity as a result of telling the story of his experiences to the incredulous people. When he was finally released, he told his story to no one. After 26 years as a fisherman, he saved enough money to come to the United States and settle in Illinois and later in California. In his 90s, by accident, a novelist, Willis George Emerson, befriended him, and he was told the story. On the old man's deathbed, he relinquished the maps that he had made of the interior of the Earth and the manuscript describing his experiences. He refused to show it to anyone while he was alive due to his past experiences of people disbelieving him and considering him insane if he mentioned the subject. The book, The Smoky God, described Olaf Jensen's unusual trip to the hollow interior of the Earth, and it was published in 1908. It tells the people who dwell inside the Earth, whom he and his father met during their visit, and whose language they learned. It's said they live from 400 to 800 years and are highly advanced in science. They can transmit their thoughts from one to another by certain types of radiations and have a source of power greater than our electricity. They are the creators of the flying saucers, which are operated by this superior power, drawn from the electromagnetism of the atmosphere. They are 12 or more feet in stature. It is remarkable how this report of a visit to the Earth's interior corresponds with what others described above, yet both were entirely independent of each other. Also, the gigantic size of the human beings dwelling in the Earth's interior corresponds to the great size of its animal life, as observed by Admiral Byrd, who during his 1,700-mile flight beyond the North Pole observed a strange animal resembling an ancient mammoth. We shall present later the theory of Marshall Gardner that mammoth found encased in ice, rather than being prehistoric animals, are really huge animals from Earth's interior who were carried to the surface by rivers and frozen in ice that was formed by the water that carried them. And that is the subterranean origin of flying saucers.
I love that story.
Pretty good stuff. Pyramid 7, what's going on? Good to see you. I heard a theory that the Earth was flatter until the flood, which caused some type of folding in on itself. Who knows? I think the flood displaced so much of what the surface of the Earth probably looked like prior to the flood.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a Pangea situation, but I think that it dramatically altered coastlines. I think entire places sunk and other places were pushed up.
Sure.
Definitely caused a lot of erosion. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'd forgotten
Yeah.
about the woolly mammoths that he claimed to see.
Yeah,
You
he
know?
did. He did.
Yeah.
He did see
Amazing.
these woolly mammoths.
It's a shame
he found the
too.
damn savage land. Yeah, he did. He found the savage lands. Like,
And that's
you
a
know,
shame too that the guy was afraid to talk about it. My God. What a
Well, it's
fantastical
understandable.
story. Yeah, but I mean it's
When you have
awful.
interesting men following you around in cars,
Yeah, it's awful. He
yeah,
threw him
you kind of shut up about things.
threw him in a mental
Yeah,
institution. It's horrible.
that part's sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. The abuse that's inflicted by government officials or whatever it may be, allegedly,
Yeah.
is extraordinary and disgusting.
I
They
know.
get away with it sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Right.
so we've been at this for an hour now. So I think before it gets too late, we should talk about Admiral Byrd's secret diary.
Please.
Yes, absolutely. So Admiral Byrd's secret diary, as it is. Admiral Richard E. Byrd's diary from February to March 1947. This is from the Truth Seeker website. The Inner Earth, my secret diary. The exploration flight over the North Pole. I must write this diary in secrecy and obscurity. It concerns my Arctic flight of the 19th day of February in the year 1947. There comes a time when the rationality of men must fade into insignificance and one must accept the inevitability of the truth. I am not at liberty to disclose the following documentation of this writing. Perhaps it shall never see the light of public scrutiny, but I must do my duty and record it here for all to read one day. In a world of greed and exploration of certain of mankind can no longer suppress that which is truth. Flight log, base camp, Arctic, 2/19/1947, 0600 hours. All preparations are complete for our flight northward, and we were airborne with full fuel tanks at 6:10 hours. Oh, 0620 hours. Fuel mixture on starboard engine seems too rich. Adjustment made at Pratt Whitney's are running smoothly. 0730 hours. Radio check with base camp. All is well. Radio reception is normal. 0740 hours. Note slight oil leak in starboard engine. Oil pressure, shear indicator seems normal, however. 0800 hours. Slight turbulence noted from easterly direction and altitude 21 feet. Correction to 1700 feet. No further turbulence, but tailwind increases. Slight adjustment of throttle control. Aircraft performing very well now. Radio check with base camp. Situation normal. 0830 hours. Turbulence encountered again. Increasing altitude 2900 feet. Smooth flight conditions again. 0910 hours. Vast ice and snow below. Noted coloration of yellowish nature and disperser in the linear pattern. Altering course for a better examination of this color pattern below. Note reddish and purple color also. Circle this area below 2 full turns and return to assigned compass heading. Position check made again to base camp and relay information concerning colorations in the ice and snow below. They cross over a small mountain range proceeding northward as best can be ascertained. Beyond the mountain range is what appears to be a river with a valley with a small river or stream running through the center portion. There should be no green valley below. Something is definitely wrong and abnormal here. We should be over ice and snow. To the port side are great forests growing on the mountain slopes. Our navigation instruments are still spinning. The gyroscope is oscillating back and forth. I alter altitude to 1400 feet and execute a sharp turn to better examine the valley below. It is green with either moss or a type of tight-knit grass. The light here seems different. I cannot see the sun anymore. We make yet another turn, and we spot what seems to be a large animal of some kind below us. It appears to be an elephant. No, it looks more like a mammoth. This is incredible, yet there it is. Decrease altitude to 1,000 feet and take binoculars to better examine the animal. It's confirmed. It is definitely a mammoth-like animal. Report this to base camp. Encounter more rolling green hills now. The external temperature indicator reached 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Counting on our heading now. Navigation instruments seem normal now. I'm puzzled over their actions. Attempt to contact base camp. Radio is not functioning. Countryside below is more level and normal, if I may use the word. Ahead we spot what seems to be a city. This is impossible. Aircraft seems light and oddly buoyant. The The controls refuse to respond. My God, off our port and starboard wings are a strange type of aircraft. They're closing rapidly alongside. They are disc-shaped and have a radiant quality to them. They're close enough now to see the markings on them. It's a type of Reich emblem. This is fantastic. Where are we? What has happened? I tug at the controls again. They will not respond. We are caught in an invisible vice grip of some type. Our radios crackle and a voice comes through in English with what perhaps is a slight Nordic or German accent. The message is, "Welcome, Admiral, to our domain. We shall land you in exactly 7 minutes. Relax, Admiral. You are in good hands." I note the engines of our plane have stopped running. The aircraft is under some strange control and is now turning itself. The controls are useless. Another radio message received. We begin landing process now, and in moments the plane shudders slightly and begins to descend as though caught in a great unseen elevator. The downward motion is negligible, and we touch down with only a slight jolt. I'm making a hasty entry in the flight log. Several men are approaching on foot towards our aircraft. They are tall with blonde hair. In the distance is a large shimmering city pulsating with rainbow hues of color. I do not know what's going to happen now, but I see no signs of weapons on those approaching. I now hear a voice ordering me by name to open the cargo door. I comply. End log. From this point, I write all the following events here from memory. It defies the imagination and would seem all but madness if it had not happened. The radio men and I are taken from the aircraft, and we are received in the most cordial manner. We were then boarded on a small platform-like conveyance with no wheels. It moves us towards the glowing city with great swiftness. As we approach, the city seems to be made of a crystal material. Soon we arrive at a large building that is a type I have never seen before. It appears to be right out of the design books of Frank Lloyd Wright, or perhaps more correctly, out of a Buck Rogers setting. We are given some type of warm beverage which tasted like nothing I have ever savored before. It is delicious. After about 10 minutes, two of our wondrous appearing hosts come to our quarters and announce that I am to accompany them. I have no choice but to comply. I leave my radio men behind and we walk a short distance and enter what seems to be an elevator. We descend downwards for some moments. The machine stops and the doors lift silently upward. We then proceed down a long hallway that is lit by rose-colored lights that seem to be emanating from the very walls themselves. One of the beings motions for us to step before a great door. Over the door is an inscription that I cannot read. "No fear, Admiral. You are to have an audience with the Master." I step inside and my eyes adjust to the beautiful coloration that seems to be filling the room completely. Then I begin to see my surroundings. What greeted my eyes is the most beautiful sight of my entire experience. It is in fact too beautiful and wondrous to describe. It is exquisite and delicate, and I do not think there exists a human terms that can describe it in any detail with justice. My thoughts are interrupted in a cordial manner by a warm, rich voice of melodious quality. "I bid you welcome to our domain, Admiral." I see a man with delicate features and with an etching of years upon his face. He is seated at a long table. He motions me to sit down in one of the chairs. After I am seated, he places his fingertips together and smiles. He speaks softly again and conveys the following. "We have let you enter here because you are of noble character and well known on the surface world, Admiral." "Surface world?" I half gasp under my breath. "Yes," the master replies with a smile. "You are in the domain of the Ariani, the inner world of the earth. We shall not long delay your mission, and you will be safely escorted back to the surface and for a distance beyond. But now, Admiral, I should tell you why you have been summoned here. Our interest rightly begins after you and your race exploded the first atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. It was that alarming time we sent our flying machines, the Fugelrads, to your surface world to investigate what your race had done. That is, of course, past history now, my dear Admiral, but I must continue on. You see, we have never interfered before in your wars and barbarity, but now we must, for you have learned to tamper with a certain power that is not for man, namely that of atomic energy. Our emissaries have already delivered messages to the powers of your world, and yet they do not heed. Now you have been chosen to be a witness here that our world does exist. You see, our culture and science is many thousands of years beyond yours, Admiral." I interrupted, "But what does this have to do with me, sir?" The master's eyes seemed to penetrate deeply into my mind, and after studying me for a few moments, he replied, "You have now reached the point of no return. There are those among you who would destroy your very world rather than relinquish their power as they know it." I nodded, and the master continued. "In 1945 and afterward, we tried to contact your race, but our efforts were met with hostility. our Fugelrads were fired upon. Yes, even pursued with malice and animosity by your fighter planes. So now I say to you, my son, there is a great storm gathering in your world, a black fury that will not spend itself for many years. There will be no answer in your arms. There will be no safety in your science. In all my rage, until every follower of your culture is trampled and all things are leveled in vast chaos, your recent war was only a prelude of what is yet to come for your race. We have seen it here more clearly with each hour. Do you say I am mistaken? No, I answered. It happened once before. The Dark Ages came and they lasted for more than 500 years. Yes, my son, replied the master. The Dark Ages will come now for your earth and will cover the earth like a pall. But I believe that some of your race will live through the storm. Beyond that, I cannot say. We see at a great distance a new world stirring from the ruins, seeking a lost and legendary treasures. And there will be here, my son, safe in our keeping. When that time arrives, we shall come forward again to help revive your culture. Perhaps by then you will have learned the futility of war and its strife, and after that time, certain of your culture and science will be returned to you for you to begin anew. You, my son, are to return to the surface world with this message. With these closing words, our meeting seemed at an end. I stood for a moment as in a dream, but yet I knew this was reality, and for some strange reason I bowed slightly, either out of respect or humility, I do not know which. Suddenly, I was again aware that the two beautiful hosts who had brought me here were again at my side. This way, Admiral, motioned one. I turned once more before leaving and looked back towards the master. A gentle smile was etched on his delicate and ancient face. Farewell, my son, he spoke, and then he gestured with a lovely slender hand a motion of peace, and our meeting was truly ended. Quickly, we walked back through the great door of the master's chamber and once again entered into the elevator. The door slid silently downward, and we were once again going upward. One of my hosts again spoke. We must now make haste, Admiral, as the master desires to delay you no longer on your scheduled timetable, and you must return with this message to your people. I said nothing. All of this was almost beyond belief, and once again my thoughts were interrupted as we stopped. I entered the room as once again with my radio man. He had an anxious expression on his face. As I approached, I said, "It's all right, Howie. It's all right." The two beings motioned us towards the awaiting conveyance. We boarded and soon arrived back at the aircraft. The engines were idling and we boarded immediately. The whole atmosphere seemed charged with an air of urgency. After the cargo door was closed, the aircraft was immediately lifted by that unseen force until we reached an altitude of 2,700 feet. Two of the aircraft were alongside for some distance, guiding us on our return way. I must state here, the airspeed indicator registered no readings, yet we moved along at a very rapid rate. 2:15 hours. A radio message comes through. We are leaving you now, Admiral. Your controls are free. Auf Wiedersehen. We watched for a moment as the Fugelrads disappeared into the pale blue sky. The aircraft suddenly felt as though caught in a sharp downward draft for a moment. We quickly recovered her control. We did not speak for some time. Each man had his thoughts. Entry in the flight log continues. We are again over vast areas of ice and snow and approximately 27 minutes from base camp. We radio them. They respond. We report all conditions normal. Normal. Base camp expresses relief at our reestablished contact. We land smoothly at base camp. I have a mission. End log entries. March 11th, 1947. I've just attended a staff meeting at the Pentagon. I've stated my full discovery and my message from the master. All is duly recorded. The president has been advised. I am now detained for several hours. 6 hours, 39 minutes to be exact. I've been interviewed inadvertently by top security forces and a medical team. It was an ordeal. I am placed under strict control via national security provisions of this United States of America. I am ordered to remain silent in regard to all that I have learned on behalf of humanity. Incredible. I am reminded I am a military man and I must obey orders. December 30th, 1956. Final entry. The last few years, elapsed since 1947, have not been kind. I now make my final entry in this singular diary. In closing, I must state that I have faithfully kept this matter secret as directed all these years. It has been completely against my values of moral right. Now, I seem to sense the long night coming on, and this secret will not die with me. But as all truth shall, it will triumph, and so it shall. This can be the only hope of mankind. I have seen the truth, and it has quickened my spirit and has set me free. I have done my duty towards my monstrous military-industrial complex. Now the long night begins to approach, but there shall be no end. Just as the long night of the Arctic ends, the brilliant sunshine of the truth shall come again, and those who are of darkness shall fall in its light. For I have seen that land beyond the pole, that center of the great unknown. Admiral Richard E. Byrd, United States Navy, December 24th, 1956. And that is the secret diary of Admiral Byrd.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was great, Pete. Really amazing.
Thank you.
How could you keep that to yourself?
Did what he had to do.
You know what I mean? Oh,
Did what he had to do. Admiral Byrd.
I love these stories. Amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's really an amazing story. That's Martin. All this could turn out to be a forgery, and yet my faith in the inner earth would not at all be shaken. You know, like I said, there are people talking about the inner earth back in the 1800s.
Mhm.
The Admiral Byrd stuff. Excuse me. Pardon me. The Admiral Byrd stuff has only been floating around since the 70s. So,
And that's because he was on his deathbed, right?
yeah, he was going to take. He didn't want to take it with him.
Yeah, thank God.
I don't know.
I think I would have spent my whole life trying to get back there again after seeing it, you know?
Yeah, there, and you know what? I think there are people who have seen it and do try to spend their lives getting there.
I would imagine.
You know,
It's fantastical. It's the closest thing to magic we have, I think.
Well, yeah, that's for sure.
Giants, mammoths.
A lot of
man,
interesting stuff
I mean,
up there. Yeah.
Can you imagine seeing a woolly mammoth?
as Edwards,
Yeah.
why was he still writing in his log while the events were taking place? And then after that, everything is from memory.
Because
Who
they
knows?
told him to stop, didn't they?
I would think so.
No, he was writing when like they were coming up to his ship, like coming up to his
Okay.
aircraft. You know,
And then the
so,
guy
like
would
here they come, and he's like scratching down in the log, like, oh fuck, here they come. Well, you know.
Well, what was it he says right before the last thing? And he said, "This is the last entry. The rest is from memory." What was going on right then? He was talking to one of these people, right?
No, he wasn't talking to them. He was writing in his flight log.
Yeah, his flight log. But then after he does this, when he says this is the last journal, and the rest is from memory, what was going on right then? He was talking to one of the guys, right? The beings.
No, he said I make a hasty last entry in the flight log.
Uh-huh.
Several men are approaching on foot towards our aircraft. They are tall with blonde hair.
Okay.
In the distance, a large shimmering city pulsates with rainbow colors of hue. I do not know what is going to happen now, but I see no signs of weapons on those approaching. I hear now a voice ordering me by name to open the cargo door. I comply. End log. From this point, I write all the following events here from memory.
Right.
It defies the imagination and would seem all but madness if it not had happened.
You probably saw a unicorn. Yep. Lasers. That's what happened.
Mammoth's enough.
Mm-hmm.
Shit. It's amazing. I love this story.
Oh, but why keep writing during an emergency? It makes no sense. Well, I mean,
Well, because it happens sometimes. I know I've done that.
Yeah, I think that he was probably not. It was either that or, what's he going to do? Open fire? Who even knows if he's armed?
You assume it's your last moment, so you want to get something down. People have an idea what was going on.
He had no idea what to expect here. They knew his name.
Yeah. Then there's that.
They knew his name.
I wonder how they knew his name.
Because they know what's going on in the surface world.
Yeah, obviously, huh?
They know
Yeah.
what's cracking.
Obviously.
Surface world is pretty interesting right now.
Hmm.
Unicorns everywhere. It's a lot of magic.
That's a good time for him to show up, that's for sure.
Dennis Martin, how do you expect anyone to believe you? You're only the first guy to fly over both poles and a famous explorer, and they still won't believe you.
I know, right?
You know, yeah.
Exactly. And he's in the military.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that should give him some credibility.
Yeah.
But
You know, David Morris points out, who wouldn't want to live in a civilization way more advanced than ours? Yeah, it would be like really stepping into the future, you know,
exactly.
with far-flung technologies that we don't understand.
Yeah, it'd be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great, Pete.
Would you guys stop and write down in your diary while this is going down? Really? Probably not.
No.
I probably would.
I
I'd
have.
be like, here comes the moon man. It's
Yeah.
all over for me. Like, what are you going to do? I'd probably just have a panic attack.
I wouldn't be wanting to take
I
everything
controlled
in.
my panic attack and didn't have it when I had something not exactly like that happen, but a little dangerous to say the least. Just wanted to keep it fresh in my mind. And also, in case I fucking died, at least someone would have some record of the damn thing, possibly.
Christopher Dockery points out that logs and journals were like cell phones back then. You know, really, logs, journals, letters,
Yeah.
like that's how people communicated, you know, like you're absolutely right. And that's a great point. So, yeah, I mean, if it's like your last moments, you want to, I mean, I wrote down everything that's going on so far. I might as well write this down. Like, here they come. Shit. You know, like,
Here they come.
like, here they come. They're coming now. I'm writing this down as they're coming. They're coming for me.
Dar,
They
it
don't have
reminds
any
me of that
weapons.
Monty
Let's
Python
see what
thing,
happens.
Where it says, it's the Monty Python scene. And then they run away.
Pete's never seen him.
I don't care for Monty Python.
I like Monty Python. I always enjoyed it.
Jay Carr points out, I'm only sold on the subterranean breakaway civilization aspect of the Hollow Earth. The Eastern mysticism throws a wrench in the works. Well, you know, they do meld the two together. And they try to do it seamlessly. You know, it is it's heavily influenced, you know, with Eastern mysticism. When you think about how there's various stories, sometimes Agartha is floating in the ethereal plane above the Gobi Desert, you know. Other times it's in the Hollow Earth. Then Shambhala, that comes directly from Buddhism. You know. So yeah, I mean, you make a good point. And the subterranean breakaway civilization, that really does lend itself to the Darrows and the Taros and the Shaver mystery because they had that leftover technology from the people who created them. You know, the aliens that created the Darrows and the Taros left all their technology when they split the planet. But they left it underground for the Darrows and Taros to take control of and use, and then they were in constant battle with each other. John Kissel, I'm surprised no one made a movie about this.
Right?
There's a movie called Iron Sky and Iron Sky 2 that do touch on this stuff. They're pretty good flicks. Sneakabout points out if you're doing a survey for the military, you would write everything down. Tina threw up a link for the Shaver Mysteries in there. Thank you, Tina.
You're welcome.
Joe Carr says it's too big of a rabbit hole with the secret society aspect. I heard Shambhala is the past and Angartha is the future as far as these hidden worlds in the occult. Yeah, you know, and so much of it is tied into theosophy as well, you know. So much is really heavily influenced by theosophy when it comes down to it. And it's that Blavatsky mysticism, you know, that comes creeping in when you start talking about these ascended masters and people like the I mean, well, more specific to Lemuria, but you get the idea of these masters figures, like the master that we're talking about here in Agartha, sometimes referred to as the king of the world.
Masters.
The masters, the ascended masters.
Masters.
So yeah, it's interesting stuff. David Morris, think about it. He's real. His son, the Antichrist, is real. Satan is divided against Satan. I think we're going to be seeing some of this tech. Things are going to change. I can feel it back. I like the way you rhymed that there at the end, David. I think that was pretty good. Really nice, tied it together with a real nice bow.
There you go.
Who knows what kind of tech we're seeing now at this point? Like, I mean, when we look into these, different encounters with these kind of craft, and we were talking about something the other night. Excuse me, of them changing color, of them performing strange aerial maneuvers at breakneck speeds.
Yeah.
So what is this kind of technology? And are these creatures, demonic and not extraterrestrial? Or are extraterrestrial and demonic one and the same? Is there a tie together in there,
That would be
that brings in the whole religious aspect of
Yeah.
the idea of the flood and the flash freezing of Antarctica and the Nephilim. Like, how does a woolly mammoth just get frozen? Like, you're standing there with your food in your mouth and you're frozen?
Yeah.
Like, that just happens by accident? Like, I guess that's just, you just frozen. Like, I was just standing here, now I'm frozen.
It's crazy.
So does this happen over a slow period of time, or does this happen
Quick.
very quickly? And could we see if this flood have swept the earth clean, and then, all this debris, this flotsam and jetsam is washed down to Antarctica and flash frozen there within 2 miles of ice? Like, who knows if you got 30-foot giants, 60-foot giants frozen under that?
Right?
Giants that cannot die because they're not mortal and they're not celestial, but something in between.
That'd be awful, wouldn't it? Be laying there just conscious, stuck.
Yeah.
Think about that scene in Bison, or what is it? It's a Robin Williams film where he played that robot and he didn't die and he's laying at the bottom of the ocean.
Bicentennial Man?
Bicentennial Man, yeah, okay.
Never seen it.
He was looking for something and it turned out to be like a statue or something. And he finally finds it, but
Dennis Martin points out, I believe there is a connection between the ET and the demonic. I think there might be some connection there too. I think you could be dealing with trans-dimensional beings.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always think too, because they say there's supposed to be like different heavens, right?
Traditionally, heaven is divided into layers.
Right. So you think maybe we don't see them so much here because they can't come into this layer, like just like we can't be underwater or we can't be out in outer space without something around us.
Yeah. That's possible.
Yeah, they are, Christopher. Says the secrets that the poles hold are immense. Yeah, an island.
Oh my God, I've been digging into this one Antarctica story for months now. So much so that I decided I had to step away from it. There's just so much information I'm trying to boil down. So I'm working on a different topic now. I've started scripting a different video for you guys about a mysterious disappearance.
The Antarctica one is going to be great, though, you guys. It's going to be so good.
I don't go selling home runs that I'm not going to be able to hit there, Tina. We're just going to make
everything about Antarctica is great. To me, everything's great. In fact, I love it.
My Secrets in the poles, says Transcendent Cthulhu. There we go. Secrets in the poles. The crop circle song, everybody.
Yep. It's a dude with the groovy moves and the nice hair.
Well, thank you, Christopher. I appreciate that. S. Edwards, have I done Missing 411? We did Missing 411. You can find all of the old episodes on BitChute. I don't remember the exact date we did it, but if you scroll through all the BitChute stuff, you'll find it on there. We did Missing 411. I don't really plan on revisiting the topic because it's so damn depressing.
Huge and depressing, yeah.
It really is. It's so depressing. Like it's really. I was watching videos about. I watched the movies, and they're just like heartbreaking. Like it's just people like who like they just lost people they care about, just vanish into thin air. You know.
Yeah.
So it's really tough. It's a tough watch, man. It's a tough topic to cover. David Polite is collecting all that stuff. More power to him, man, because that's tough stuff.
You got that one video? Was it Nahani? Nahani?
The Nahani Valley, yeah. The Valley of the Headless Men.
Yeah.
Do you ever cover the Kecksburg UFO crash? No, Mary, we never talked about the Kecksburg UFO crash. Harriet Boating, I think you should do a discussion on the Marine Kingdom, which Aquaman is based on. We did do a discussion on like mer people, didn't we?
I'm sure it was included in something, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we specifically did a mer people episode because somebody
I think we did. I'm almost sure we did. Jesse would know for sure.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's got the list.
I'll have to find it. I think we did a mer people episode.
Yeah, I think we did. Because we talked about who was better, Aquaman or Namor. Yeah, I'm sure we did.
I can't remember.
Yeah, but that's going to do it for tonight, everybody. I do appreciate you all tuning in here with us night after night, day after day, as we delve into the world of the weird. I'd like to say thank you to Joseph Aldred for your generous super chat. Much appreciated. Never expected, but always appreciated. And thank you to my panel for being here tonight. Guys, if you check the description of the video, you'll find a link to my Twitter and my email. If you want to get in touch with me, share your scary stories. If you got some kind of interesting research you think I should be looking into, go ahead and shoot me a line there. Link to the Teespring store. You can find all kinds of cool designs there, from Hermes Trismegistus to the Thoth shirt to the Mithra in the form of Boundless Time. All kinds of weird stuff to look at if you're into weirdo stuff. Patreon, thank you to all my Patreon supporters for being with me for so long. And if you're in a position to become a Patreon supporter for $1 a month, that's $1 a week. That's less than the price of a cup of coffee. Go on and click that link and sign on up. I really do appreciate it. Links to everybody
Totally
else's
worth it. Fun stuff as
down in the
always.
description of the video. So please go ahead and subscribe to everybody else's channel as well. And as always, thank you so much for being here. This has been the Creepy Little Book, and you've been listening to High Strangeness, the #1 late night paranormal podcast on YouTube. I've been your host, Pete, and with me tonight were Tina Tomaszewski and DJ D of the DJ D Show. And until tomorrow night, everybody, stay creeped out.